So as I mentioned in the beginning, it's the Art Hive, a public home place for all of us. And Art Hive offers individual opportunities. It's a little bit of a definition. Opportunities for creative expression, for building self-efficacy and autonomy, as well as opportunities to feel welcomed, to belong to an inclusive and loving community. There are places to simultaneously be oneself and connect with others in authentic ways. So we'll have two presentations today. So first, we'll have Nicole, who will discuss her findings with her master's research on perceived learning at the Art Hive for participants in the third age, so 55 to 75 years old, and the implications for art hives and other community art studios to have a significant impact on the well-being of aging populations. And a little bit about Nicole. So Nicole Macoretta is an artist, an art therapist, art educator, and administrator. Her artwork is grounded in and reflective of her love for the natural world and fibre materiality. She is passionate about encouraging the emergence of cultivation of creative capacities in support of physical and mental well-being and more connected communities. And I'll let for Melissa to translate this portion before Nicole jumps in with the presentation. Oh, and okay, go ahead, Melissa.
OK. Alors, c'est donc Nicole Macoretta, bienvenue. Elle va nous présenter en fait la ruche d'art comme un lieu de chez soi public pour nous tous. Donc, c'est quoi une ruche d'art? C'est des lieux où les individus ont des opportunités d'expression créative, de renforcement de l'auto-efficacité et de l'autonomie, et des opportunités pour se sentir accueillis et appartenir à une communauté inclusive et aimante. Ce sont des endroits pour être à la fois soi-même et se connecter avec les autres de manière authentique. Alors, dans la conversation, Nicole discutera des résultats de sa recherche de maîtrise sur l'apprentissage perçu à la ruche d'art pour les participants du troisième âge de 55 à 75 ans et les implications pour les ruches d'art et d'autres studios artistiques communautaires pour voir leur impact significatif sur le bien-être des populations vieillissantes. Alors, Nicole Macoretta est une artiste. Nous avons le plaisir qu'elle soit avec nous aujourd'hui. Elle est art-thérapeute et éducatrice artistique. Elle est aussi administratrice. Son travail artistique est ancré dans son amour pour le monde naturel, dont la matérialité des fibres en est le reflet. Elle est passionnée par l'idée d'encourager l'émergence et la culture des capacités créatives afin de favoriser le bien-être physique et mental, ainsi que des communautés plus connectées. Voilà.
And thank you, Nicole, for being here. So the way we'll go about the presentations is Nicole will do the presentation in English, and then Melissa will take just keynotes from it and leave it in the chat.
Thank you so much, Diana and Melissa, for inviting me to speak about third space and the research that I did as part of my master's thesis project. It really was a work of love, and as a past facilitator of La Ruche d'Art and another art hive working with seniors as well in Montreal, it is a time that I really cherish, and I have so many wonderful memories, and I'm really happy to revisit them and share them with you today. So I did my master's research in art education, actually, and it was a case study on the seniors group that met at La Ruche d'Art in St. Henry. And I looked at perceived learning in the third age. So part of my findings were about how the uniqueness of the space led to new opportunities for learning and ways of being, and how the Art Hive created a third space. And that's the piece that I'll focus on today. So there's a lot more in my thesis about what was learned and how it was learned, and people's ideas about community connection in particular, but I don't think I'll have time to go through all of those. So I'm just gonna focus on the structure of the studio today. So the idea of the third space comes from Homi Bhabha's 1994 text, The Location of Culture. And he talks about the need for the in-between space that are not entirely private and they're not entirely public, but they're places where individuals can express and explore and take ownership over their individual identities as well as their collective identities of what gets created outside of the realms of home and work and school. And these spaces they're fluid and liminal, and they're co-created by people who are engaged in them. So my project, I interviewed 11 participants who were in the third age, which I define as 55 to 75 years old. I asked them the same 6 questions that were open-ended about learning at the Art Hive. So how they learned, what they learned, their history with art education, and I really wanted to know, why do you attend regularly? Through qualitative iterative coding process, I had 3 major emergent themes come up. And the first one was about the studio structure, and I'm going to discuss all the sub-themes that came out of the studio structure. And then the second was community connection, and then the third was learning at the Art Hive, what was learned and how it was learned. So you can go to the next slide, Diana. Thank you. So this is La Couche d'Art in St. Henry, which sadly does not exist anymore, but it really was a treasure in the city and a much loved space by the community. And from the 11 participants that I spoke to, all of the participants discussed the importance of the studio structure for why they continue to participate and participate regularly. And the first sub-theme that came up was the abundance of materials. So as you can see in the picture, along the wall there, on the side and in the back, there is just a huge bookshelf that filled with all kinds of materials that were mostly donated by the community and then used by the community. Everything is laid out in an open manner. Everything is free and available for everyone to use. There truly was something for everyone. And having so many materials just out in front of you, there was a lot of spontaneous inspiration that happened. A lot of reuse, a lot of reinvention of items and material that wasn't necessarily created for that original purpose. Also, having so much material available for the participants, it really gave a sense of hospitality that the participants mentioned. It made them feel like the studio was always giving back to them, even though they were coming there to take something from the studio was always giving back. Which made it a really wonderful place to be. Some participants did bring their own projects and their own materials. However, a lot of the time they didn't even use them because they would be excited or influenced or inspired by something that was there or something that somebody else was working on. One participant said, "I always bring my pens, but mostly I don't use them. I never know what I'm going to do here or who is going to be here." So it's really talking about that fluid space, that it's always changing, it's unpredictable, and it's spontaneous. So you never know kind of what's gonna happen or how you're going to be inspired. The second subtopic that people discussed was accessibility. So the studio itself was physically accessible to by public transit, and it was fairly easy to get to. It was also free to attend, and so anybody could come during the opening hours, and it created a real sense of inclusivity and a very relaxed tone because everyone was welcome. And thirdly, regarding accessibility, there was a freedom from the pressure to just make art for art's sake. There was a freedom from the pressure to that you didn't need to create something that was going to be valued in any kind of way, whether it be with a dollar sign or in any other way. It was just making art for art's sake because you wanted to. Next slide, Diana. This is the backyard of the studio. This is the garden. And the next sub-theme that came up was the access to nature, that this was a really important piece for the third age participants. It was important as a space to reflect and important as a place for people to take a moment for oneself or have a private moment or have a private moment with another participant. The space was cultivated as a community garden, and so it was created by participants and the facilitators, and then taken care of by the participants and facilitators, and it was always ever evolving into artistic projects and various harvests of vegetables and fruit, and it really was like a super living piece of the studio. One of the participants mentioned that it was his favorite space to do nothing. And he said, I like to go out in the garden and sit when there were piles of people in the studio. I would just sit there and listen to the traffic, listen to the neighbors, what's happening here and inside the studio. It was relaxing. I needed to do nothing. I needed the space. And the Art Hive, that space was always there. You could always go and just be there without having to do anything. So the next sub-theme that came up regarding the structure of the studio was the importance of the lack of a hierarchy. So 7 of the 11 participants noted that the lack of hierarchy made the space more equal. So the fact that everyone is a participant, even the facilitators, because the facilitators are making art alongside the participants, it creates a sense of respect for each other's individual process. And also it creates like an equal playing field, that there's nobody who is ahead of anybody else, or nobody that is the authority on anything else, especially when it comes to artistic practice. One of the participants said, when someone is working on a project or having an experience that we haven't, I don't see anyone as the teacher or anyone as the student. It's very equal. And there's also a culture of skill sharing at the Art Hive, and that is really part of the democratic participation of the space that I think really made it into a third space, and a space where it was allowing the space and the environment to change so much, because it was really the interaction between people and what they were doing and the environment and the materials, and it was just like a constant buzzing between those 3 things. Another participant said, it's good that people can work in their own direction because it leads to a cross-pollination of ideas. The seniors group has so much collective knowledge, everyone brings something different, and people teach each other how to do what they like doing. And I think that also speaks to building self-efficacy and feeling like you as an individual has something valuable to say and to share. And that was really evident with the participants of my study. And they all mentioned feeling that they had built up some sense of self-esteem and confidence around the things that they enjoyed doing, and people wanted to know how to do that, or how to learn a specific skill from them. So that was very enriching for them. The next piece is the atmosphere of the space. People discuss the atmosphere as being friendly, inclusive, and that there was no sense of competition. So it was there was a recognized culture of acceptance at the Art Hive. So you could do whatever you wanted to, in terms of if you wanted to participate in a collaborative group project or your own project, if you wanted to chat, if you didn't, if you wanted to kind of do your own thing, it was all accepted, and it was all good. One of the participants mentioned, it's okay to be alone or part of the group. You can see some people come here just to be in their own space, even kids and adolescents. So we're really seeing that this space was seen as a place where you could just be and it was safe to be there, and no one was going to judge you. And it allowed for a lot of the barriers to come down, because there was no perceived threat of judgment, and everyone is accepted. And so this really leads to opportunities for opening up oneself and to look at the world differently, considering other perspectives, and that allows for moments of transformational learning. This sense of safety as well is how the Art Hive can be considered as a public home place. So the public home place is a concept from Belenki, and that is considered to be a safe space, protected both physically and psychologically from harm, and that which encourages individuals to recognize and engage and express their unique potential and foster confidence and leadership. And we've definitely seen this at the Art Hive. And the next slide. And so there is a constant co-emergence happening at the Art Hive due to the interaction between participants, this space, and the materials. And it's all undirected and unprogrammed, and the inspiration and the influence really arises naturally and spontaneously. Well, one of the participants said that La Ruche has been, just like many of the projects we make, a way to open up the kaleidoscope again. It is a different way to come to the human family. La Ruche has become a place to come and vent and discuss. And there is a lot of conversations that happen here. And as a facilitator, I witnessed a lot of conversations and discussions with the seniors group, specifically on current events and on politics and on things happening within the city. And very few times was there any, agreement on a topic, but there was always mutual respect. And within that space, we had some really uncomfortable conversations, but also people were very open to hearing other people's considerations or perspectives, and it led to a lot of very fruitful conversations, and on artwork as well, of course. And next slide.
So maybe 2 more minutes to conclude. All
great.
Right.
I think this is my final slide, so.
Perfect.
Yes. So I think it's pretty evident that from the participants in my case study that they really appreciated the Art Hive as a space that they could go. And I think that it's a very important space for all people, absolutely, the entire community, but specifically for aging populations, because I think that it allows for community connection where one can break social isolation and be somewhere in a social space where they don't have to be expected to do something specific, or there's no monetary value about being there. It really is just a space to be. And there's also a lack of hierarchy, so everyone has something to offer. Everyone is valued for what they bring. It promotes active engagement between people and between even oneself. If you just want to go and work through your own artistic process, that is welcomed and wonderful. It fosters individual voices and encourages self-expression, of course, and offers many opportunities to witness and engage with multiple perspectives and broadening one's horizons. So as I mentioned, this is just a very small piece of my research. And if you want to, I can send you the link to the full thesis that has everything in it.